Welcome to Big City, Small Town, the weekly podcast all about San Antonio and the people who make it go and grow. I'm your host, Bob Rivard. This week's episode is an opportunity for our audience to learn more about San Antonio's extraordinary 14-year journey to build an early childhood education system in the city. The long-term solution to San Antonio's generational poverty, experts agree, is providing universal education opportunities to all children at a very young age, regardless of zip code, race or ethnicity, or family income. We have to go back to 2011 when Mayor Julián Castro convened a Blue Ribbon Task Force to identify the most effective methods for improving the quality of education in San Antonio. The recommendations, in turn, from that task force led voters to approve the creation of Pre-K for SA. Within a very few years, early childhood education centers were opened on all four sides of the city, serving thousands of 4-year-olds. Competitive grants helped expand pre-K enrollment in partner school districts, and by 2022, educators began enrolling 3-year-olds into the program. That progress, in turn, led to the creation of Early Matters in 2020, an initiative chaired by Peter J. Holt, CEO of Holt Group and chairman and managing partner of Spurs Sports and Entertainment, and former Texas Speaker of the House Joe Straus. Civic and business leaders set an ambitious goal of enrolling 50% of the city's children in early education programs. Peter J. Holt is in the studio today with us, and he's joined by Mark Larson, Executive Director of Early Matters, and Dr. Sarah Baray, who is finishing her 9th year as CEO of Pre-K for SA. Peter, Mark, and Sarah, welcome to Big City, Small Town. Peter, you're a very busy guy. Tell us why, at the outset, you're so focused on this and you've been so dedicated to it for 5 years.
First, let me say I'm really happy you're doing this podcast. San Antonio needs alternative methods and modes of media and information, and I think we've been a little bit behind the curve, and so really grateful you're doing this, and I listen as much as I can, and appreciate you having us on to talk about this. How I got started in early education actually goes back before I entered any of the fancy titles that you talked about before, and really entered the business community. I first started after high school even in high school, having to do middle school and high school, having to do community service projects, both kind of because my family mandated it, and and because our school had a lot of programming that encouraged or mandated it. I did most of that via work with kids, a lot at the Boys and Girls Club, St. PJ's, a variety of organizations around YMCA, a variety of organizations around San Antonio that focus on youth, and spent most of my time with kids that were 8, 7 and under, and just really enjoyed that. And when I got out of high school, I went to UT for a couple years. That didn't go so well academically. It went well in other ways, but this is probably not the podcast for that. And left UT and didn't know what I wanted to do. And so came back to San Antonio and enrolled at San Antonio College and got a job. And my first job was working at George Gervin Academy. And
on the east side.
On the east side, yeah. And, Barbara Gervin Hawkins she's still, leading the charge there, but was the active, I don't know what she called herself there, superintendent or, but one of the first charter schools that was certified and licensed in Texas. And my job was, I think my official title was, teacher assistant, but at a small charter school like that, I kind of did anything they asked me to do. And most of it was working for their kindergarten and their pre-K. and helping out the two teachers. I still remember Mrs. Camp. She was kind of my core boss, and I thought I wanted to go into education as my primary career at the time, and so I worked mostly with young kids, and they started their early education program because their original mission was to help underserved communities, mostly with high school dropouts. And their scope has obviously now grown and developed and progressed, but they realized one of the big reasons why there were high school dropouts is because they had kids. They were teen moms and teen dads, and they had to go get a job. And so so that's why they started their early education program. And needless to say, it was a very eye-opening experience based on the way I was raised, and so. But I learned two things there. I learned a lot of things, but a couple things that really stuck out to me and influenced me was. One, I did not want to be a teacher or a principal. That would probably ruin a lot of kids, and also in a nuanced way that I could fulfill my heart's desire in different ways. I didn't know how at the time, but I could fulfill that. Not having it be my career, and then I also learned. I knew it, but I really saw it from maybe a new perspective. The impact of good teachers and a good, I don't want to say school, just a good place for early education to happen. And not only the influence of that on the child, but the influence of that on the community around that. So parents, aunts, uncles, we were talking earlier, tias, right? A little abuelas, the community that surrounds a family and it surrounds a child. And I learned the impact that the place and the people in the place, most specifically the instructors and the teachers, can have on that. And I learned that takes a focus and effort and is not rocket science. One example that really sticks out was we had times during the day on what Dr. Baray would probably use as like a fancy like motor skills, but it was, hey, we're gonna have shoe tying competitions, and it was like 5 to 7 minutes, and there was some kids that couldn't tie their shoes, and some of the kids, right, their parents, right, let's make it easy, let's just do the Velcro. We had shoes there that were donated or we found or whatever, and we'd have those, and to see little progressions of that kid couldn't tie their shoes and could tie their shoes, and the confidence and the ability to improve their writing, and just like on and on and on. And we just constantly do these little what you would think are not rocket science, because they aren't, but they're focused. Really would improve kids' outcomes and their confidence, their ability to learn, and so I learned that, and really kind of was a very impactful moment in my life. I went on to Incarnate Word, got my business degree, entered the family business, and the need at the time was workforce and technical workforce. And so I shifted a lot of my focus, and San Antonio is a great town, but also a town that has a lot of need. And so whenever you start asking questions, the leaders end up giving you the problem to fix. And so that happened, and started working on some organizations like Workforce Alamo, Workforce Solutions Alamo, Alamo Colleges, San Antonio Works, et cetera, really focused on what's the talent pipeline and why is it so fragmented, and how does the education system work? What happened with vocational education? What happened with where are the corporations? Why aren't we investing in the talent pipeline down through the ranks? Where are internships? All of that stuff. And I'm glad to say that there's been, I don't think we solved that problem, but there's been significant progress around San Antonio, and I would say around the nation, both societally and functionally, in that space. And so 5 to 7 years into that, I through that process got to know Kate Rogers. Rogers really well. Kate was at the time leading a lot of HEB's efforts, the Butt family's efforts, and I was and is an expert in kind of education and talent pipelines, and so got to know her really well. She's now leading the Alamo in their transformative project and plan, and doing a great job. But I kind of was starting to transition out of the workforce roles in the city, rightfully so. And she came to me when she was getting her 14th master's or doctorate or
She's
whatever.
Dr. Rogers
I don't know,
now.
whatever it was, and said, hey, basically my thesis is on early education and how everything starts there. And I've really learned a lot about that, both the entire spectrum of societal impact on that, whether it's economic, we were talking about health, just the range of the human category that early education and early childhood care is, it's kind of obvious, but it's weirdly hard to logically wrap your brain around it. It's kind of twofold, that it starts, before 4, 5, and under. You can maybe argue the exact age, but it starts really young, whether it's brain development or it's the family situation they grow up in, the education system, et cetera. And she came to me and said, hey, there's some organizations in Texas and cities in Texas and around the nation that have quite literally, maybe not literally fixed, but have made wild progress in this space, and I think that San Antonio is ripe for that because of a lot of the welcoming nature of Pre-K for SA, as you mentioned, other initiatives that have been received well in San Antonio, and we should do this. And so she recruited me and Joe Strauss to lead kind of a exploratory committee, and we got different people from different backgrounds, business community, education, et cetera, to start going and learning about these cities: Fort Worth, Charlotte, Tulsa, Houston, different places where they've done slightly modified versions of what we're doing at Early Matters, with each a little bit different focus. And so dove in and started learning more. It's also the time when I have 4 kids, and at the time the oldest was 6 or 7, and had my own experience around how challenging it is to find. And I have tremendous resources. I have a wonderful wife that is focused on this. I have family in town, and it was still challenging to navigate and find quality early child care, and how do you measure that? Where do you look for that? Who's the is there a guiding a sister or organization that can help with that? And found that it's challenging, and so kind of combination of the research Kate showed and we learned through this committee and my own experience, realized that this is important and can have a very exponential impact on our community if we can improve quality. San Antonio is interesting to where we, not to say we don't have a quantity problem, but we kind of don't have a quantity problem. There are plenty of seats available. We need more, but compared to a lot of other communities, there are plenty of places to go. It's just navigating that and improving the quality of those places, and access and quality. And so we kind of turned that committee into a real Early Matters organization chapter, and hired Mark because we realized, hey, we need somebody that's working on this every day, and with his background, I think it's ideal, and really established us as a formal organization to mostly work on quality and access. And I think it's been a really positive journey, and we've made some really good progress, with also some big hills to still climb.
Wow. You guys need to jump in.
Yeah.
Although I would preface it by saying that I consider that vote that we took those years ago now, 14 years ago, to be one of the most consequential decisions that we've taken in our city. And, hats off to Mayor Castro for seeing that. It could be the signature legacy of his mayoral time. But how do you feel about where we stand now today? We've had the state come in with some all-day early childhood education funding that didn't exist before that, and I just see nothing but progress. But you're inside and may see it. You may see so much more ahead of us that we still need to do. Yeah. Sarah, you want to?
Yeah, I'll jump in here because I think that both things are true. We've made a tremendous progress, and in some ways we are the envy of the state and the nation for having made that decision all those years ago. And also we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we're poised to do that, and certainly the work that Early Matters is doing is going to help us get there. But I want to share a little bit to Peter's point on a recent study that came out. The City of San Antonio commissioned a study to look at what is the supply of early learning and care out there in the community, and figure out what the quality level is, where it's located, and some other issues that we know affect the access and quality issues around workers' pay, the education of the early learning teachers. And what that study showed, it was done by Texas A&M San Antonio, who's a tremendous partner in this work. And they surveyed providers across our community, across Bexar County, as well as held over 50 focus groups to gather their data. And it's a mixed method study. And some of the big key findings that came out of that is that while we do, in fact, have more supply than many communities do, it is still not quite sufficient. But more importantly, the supply is not currently rated for quality in terms of at very many places. And I hesitate to say it doesn't mean they're not quality, but it means that we have no way to know that because they haven't gotten into one of the programs, whether it's Texas Rising Star or a national accreditation, that would let us know. And in fact, what that study showed was that for a family who has a young child under the age of 5, if they are looking for a childcare seat right now, there's about 66,000 seats in the community, which is insufficient. But of those that are open, only 15% are open at any one time. And of those 15%, only 3% of them are rated for quality.
Oh, that's not good.
And if for infants and toddlers, it's less than 1%. At any one time, there are about 1,000 seats open in a high-quality space for infants and toddlers. So if
a lot of it's babysitting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it does. It's just not, because that's the other thing is the average education level of our early childhood workforce is a high school diploma, and that's because that's required. And the wages are so low that, averages around $11 an hour, and which means you can go work at, any number of places, including Bill Miller, H-E-B.
It's not a living wage.
It's not a living wage, and it doesn't have any benefits with it. And you can go with lots of other places where you can take your high school diploma and go make almost twice as much and get benefits. And, and so it makes it hard for people to stay. So the study was not surprising. The outcome was not surprising to those of us that work close to this because we see it. But it was great to have this baseline study that says, okay, now we see what the scope of the problem is, and here's how we're going to start to move toward it. And while we were doing this study, Pre-K4SA actually had commissioned a study on our Shared Service Alliance, which is an alliance of 94 providers that are focused on these issues. And that study came out about the same time. And what that showed was that our alliance members have raised wages to on average $14.82 an hour. So getting close to our $15 an hour goal. And they have, the turnover rate has decreased dramatically. The number of providers with professional learning and CDA credentials and associate's degrees is up because that's part of the infrastructure of what we're providing. So the A&M study also showed that those kinds of strategies, the providers are saying that's what we need more of. And I think this is where Mark can jump in with, because that's what Early Matters has put together a plan to bring more of that to our city.
Go ahead, Peter.
Well, I was just really quickly before Mark jumped in. You mentioned something, Bob, about the legislature providing a change in education funding for to allow and fund the public education system to play in this space at 4-year-olds?
4-year-olds. 4-year-olds.
And while I think that's a phenomenal shift and a growth in receptivity around funding for public education in Texas, it didn't necessarily address the structural nature of our current education system and how they're not built for early education.
Right.
And that's no fault of theirs. It's just, if you look at the structure of public education, the majority of the focus and thus the funding is as the kid gets older. And whether you can look at anything, whether that's, most bonds include sports facilities, and obviously I love sports, and so I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying the average dollar to serve a kid goes way up as it goes along, and thus the people, the processes, the curriculums, the everything that surrounds that gets more focus
and the culture.
Yeah, and the culture, right? And so there was this new funding source, but not necessarily kind of assistance or offers or credit, to say, well, how are you going to do 4-year-olds? And then I would argue, why just 4-year-olds? Well, because it was easy, right? It's just 1 year earlier. Makes total sense logically, but it actually doesn't provide a solution for where the kind of hardest piece, the 0 to 3. And again, I don't want to, when you're given a nice steak, you don't want to say, why is the steak so small? So I don't want to sound like a complainer here. I think it's still good progress, but it still doesn't really address the kind of overarching issue. And so unless our nation and our state and down through kind of government and how dollars are raised, county and cities up to the state, is willing to take on the massive dollar shift and structural shift to go quite literally start at 0, then some of these kind of initial or surges won't fix it, and potentially could be a little bit of a political or societal Band-Aid that says we fixed that. Yeah. Why are you coming back? Or why we allowed 4-year-old, and so and I think one of the signals that shows that concern to me is that the enrollment is actually not that great. Of 4-year-old in our community is not that great, and we want to help with that. We want to drive that up, but the initial right away, you'd think logically, free school 1 year earlier, that will help my family, and I can go get my job at whatever it is. Didn't actually just immediately trickle down, and so that kind of validates some of my concerns about unless we're going to do the upend and kind of change the entire public education system, starting at 0 and shifting some of that funding or rebalancing some of that funding, there's still going to be a tremendous need, maybe even more, for that 0 to 3, 0 to 4 from a, I don't know what you want to call it, decentralized solution standpoint.
Mark, you have some incredibly compelling data that you've shared with me, and I'd like you to share with the audience about where we're going demographically as a city and really as a state and a country. But our concern here is San Antonio and Bexar County, and legislatures are awash in some windfall revenue now. I don't know whether or not there's any prospect of more funding coming to early childhood education in this session or not, but I think you ought to educate our audience a little bit. You don't need to have school-aged children to care about this. It's really consequential for the future of our city, of addressing generational poverty and reaching children, as Peter said, much earlier than the first grade. It's sometimes too late by then.
Part of the structure of how Early Matters was born in the first place, with the efforts and focus of Kate Sarah, Peter, Joe, and
Bob was there in the early
a
days.
lot of others.
I remember day one.
Yeah,
I'm proud I was there.
You were around before I was in this work, but it was highlighted to say, look, this is, as much as this is a human development and piece, this is a workforce issue as well. It is impacting our current workforce. We all experienced it during COVID, when it was like, we forgot that K-12, one of its primary purposes was a place to put the kids go so we could go to work. That got better. People are now back in school, but early childhood didn't. There's still a solution that we need to provide there. Here in San Antonio, we have 135,000 children under 5 years old. And 2/3 of those have all available parents working. So if they have one parent, they're working. If it's two parents, they're both working. That's a lot of kids that need to be someplace. The other thing that stacks onto that is the Harvard Center for Developing Child has some graphs that people can find on the Early Matters website that talk about that 90% of your brain development takes place before your first day of kindergarten. And we in Texas have basically decided that we are willing to spend $130,000 per human to work on human development. And we spend $10,000. It's basically $10,000 more or less for kinder, $10,000 for first, second, third, on the way up through 12th grade. But we don't spend our first state dollar until the last 10% of your brain development. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And part of what Peter was referencing is if we had gone back and we understood 100 years ago, this is how brain development works. This is when the am I reading ready by kindergarten? Am I getting ready to do the learning, working on the executive function skills? If we had understood that back then, we probably wouldn't have structured school like we do now. There is a far, far higher ROI for 2-year-olds or 1-year-olds or 2-month-olds than there is for 3rd graders or 10th graders. But that's not where we've committed our public funding to date. And so we've largely left the sector to fend for itself. Everybody go out and launch a new early learning center if you want, or childcare, or whatever you'd like to call it. But we don't, other than what Sarah has created, really just and her team has created just in the last 3-ish years with the Shared Service Alliance, there are very few supports for this. It's largely moms and pops. We really mean mostly moms, nearly all moms, running small businesses. Probably 5% are nonprofits or faith-based. But we don't have good structures around this. And part of the challenge that we're facing is without the superstructures and systems, whether it's not that we need to recreate school districts, that's not where we're pointed, but how do we support these early learning and early childhood opportunities, whether it's the 700 early learning centers that we have in San Antonio, that exist in San Antonio, or the 300 licensed home providers that we have. How do we help them increase in their access, quality, and affordability for our families? This has become there's more and more research that also points to, particularly for folks like, I think it's most easy to see for folks like Peter and others who are in multi-generational businesses, that we're not planning for next week. We're not planning for, we need to accommodate that, but we have to look a quarter century down the road. And that workforce is being developed now. When we hire somebody, we'll check for their accounting skills and can they do GAAP, but right after that, and we say, yep, you can do the work, then we immediately switch to the executive function skills. And do you have interpersonal abilities? Are you curious? Do you ask good questions? Can you delay gratification? And those things are built when you're younger than 5, again, before we've committed any funds. So to date, we have not created early childhood in that entire sector. The 90% of your brain development has not been declared a public good. And
the one thing that is a bit odd about this that most people I didn't know this, is that our government actually has recognized this and has recognized this for decades. And you can see that because Workforce Solutions Alamo, which is our workforce development board that is funded 100% from tax dollars, well, I don't know about 100%, but pretty close to 100%. Yeah. And which exists in every county in Texas and mostly across the U.S. has some form of this. 80% of their budget goes directly to childcare. So meaning there are childcare centers that get stipends per kid directly from Workforce Solutions Alamo. And so there's these odd paradoxes, well, in most places, but especially in this world, to where there is a recognition, and the issue is that it's woefully underfunded. It just can't serve. The formula was not developed in a way to grow as our population as our population grows or demographics shifted. And so I just want to mention that and then say, if we as a society or a government or a state is not going to expand that, or is going to take on this structural shift of public education, there will have to be this a improvement in the decentralized system and an increased funding in a decentralized system. And I think that that's one of the hopes that I have for our Early Matters chapter is we're not here, Mark kind of mentioned this, is hopefully we're not here to pick winners and losers. It's not, we don't want to get into the other debates that happen in this space of, go public or charters are bad or, vouchers are great. Like that's less of a big
everybody's
deal
in the same boat,
us.
really.
Yeah, everybody's in the same boat, and so if there's in-home care, okay. If there's large centers, okay. If public education's gonna assist, okay. How can we help provide enabling systems behind it to where there's quality and access and navigation and ease of the system and improved outcomes? I think that's the goal.
I just got to jump in here, Bob, because I want to highlight something. Back in, was it 2017 or 2018 when we did the education forum on early learning?
Yes.
And it was after that we started saying, how could we get business leaders to understand this issue and really get focused on it? And there were a few of us around the table trying to figure that out. And then the providers were like, we need business people to be able to speak on this. So I just want to note, Peter Holt could give lectures on the important, but really to understand, have a prominent business leader like Peter and like Joe and like John Brozovich and some of the others Kate understand that at such a deep level, and to have someone who was in the K-12 charter world for a long time can speak to these issues at a really deep level, I think is huge progress that we need to make note of, because that's what's driven San Antonio's progress is really our business leaders. Way back from when the Blue Ribbon Task Force started, we had a great mayoral leader who did it, but he called on Charles Butt and General Robles from USAA to lead that task force. And then again with Early Matters, calling on Joe and Peter to lead that. We're really fortunate in San Antonio that we have business leaders who have made it their business to know this.
It's interesting to me that at the outset, Peter talked about his personal experience in workforce development and then switched to early childhood education. This episode airs in early May, and we're days away from a mayoral election. If there's one thing all the mayoral candidates agreed on, it's that when you talk to people about workforce issues, their biggest need is childcare, and as both an expense and also proximity, whether it's in their neighborhood or their area, that they can get quality childcare. So we've seen the city under Mayor Ron Nierenberg undertook two new initiatives with city funding. One was the housing bond, which was a first, and that seems to be going very well, where they're partnering with the private sector and letting the private sector lead on these projects, and they're not trying to get into the business of housing themselves. Less success with Ready to Work, SA. That has not delivered the numbers or the income we want, but they are funding about at $35 million a year, that program. It makes me wonder whether or not we should be looking at innovative ways to ask the city to fund more investment in early matters. And I know, Peter, I've heard on other occasions you call out the business community and say we need to raise more money from the private sector as well. So do we wait on the state for these fundamental changes, or do we look for to turn inward and do more ourselves?
We have a big opportunity San Antonio in so many ways has taken a bold step forward. Really, pre-K for SA, as you mentioned, was the biggest first example. The amount of support and engagement from the business community, philanthropic support that has enabled us to exist and begin to wake up and work on this every day has been remarkable. And I think that there's another step for us. You mentioned that we're in the legislature right now. For this will be close to wrapping up by the time this airs. There are a couple of opportunities for the state, really for the first time ever, to put money toward early learning outside of the public school sector. And there are a couple bills that have potential. Even if those go through, they are scraping at the surface, and there is way more work to do. There are currently, as we're looking at this, and I just want to throw in one thing here because a lot of this is like, hey, aren't families supposed to solve this? And I'm going to come back to the public piece, right? To the policy piece. Early childhood right now costs mostly between $10,000 and $12,000 per child per year. That is more than Texas A&M University San Antonio, and we're asking families who are in the very earliest stages of their career when they're making the least ever. We don't have 529s. You can't get a Pell Grant. There's no loans for it. You just have to deal with it if you want to have the opportunity to stay in the workforce. So we put families in a terrible bind. So if families can't pay more, it's inelastic for them. If the federal government or state government isn't going to throw in more, we could try locally. But we also need to have opportunities, and I think this is where policy can do some work, to incentivize businesses to jump in as well. So a number of other sectors around municipalities around the country have done things like employer match programs. So we can, if we ask the state or the city or county to say, look, can you put up in Dallas, they're testing it with $1 million. And they said, look, if for every dollar that an employer puts in up to this certain amount for a childcare for one of their employees, a dollar comes out of public funding and then effectively reduces what the family has to pay by $2, right? This is a massive, massive help. And that money was spoken for within a week because so many employers jumped in immediately. We could create something like that here fairly readily. And I think that it would incentivize a lot more dollars to come in from the business sector who, every one of them, we had a breakfast with a number of CEOs that from Whataburger and Zachary and SWBC and Toyota, and every single one of them, I thought we were going to have to make the case for early childhood. And they were like, this is an issue for all of us. Like, we're ready. And as Peter talks about, this is an opportunity to move from this is happening to me to I'm doing something about it. And I think that with more of our city business leadership and more of our city engagement and the opportunities, not that they don't have to do it alone, but that we can come together to work on that, I think there are some big opportunities. There are also pieces like if they're making $11 an hour and they keep leaving, are there ways to do wage supplements that could be publicly funded, that could potentially come out of a little bit of a modification of a ready to work, that there are ways to do something like that. So people are, the people who are doing 90% of the brain development work and meeting the needs of these infant and toddler who, as a community, we want those parents to be able to, if they want to work, come work. But right now, so many of them can't even afford to take a job because childcare costs so much.
I'm afraid we're talking about $15 an hour in an economy where the bottom line now is $20 an hour.
We're a long way away.
Inflation has post-pandemic has had a real impact, and the hourly wages are a significant issue.
Yeah.
Would you favor approaching the city and asking them to be as innovative with the 2027 bond as they were with the 2022 bond, and to find, a 5-year cycle of commitment for funding for somehow addressing some of these early childhood education needs that you're talking about, whether it's the providers or whether it's incentives to businesses or whether it's direct payments to families?
I just want to make clear, I work for the city, so I won't be approaching them about anything.
Yeah, I was going to jump on this one, so Sarah didn't have them.
Just so you won't turn it down if it comes.
I won't. Yeah. We're ready. And I'll share some things, too, after Mark responds.
So the early childhood community has come together over the last couple of years and written a citywide plan to increase access, quality, and affordability. No surprise that coming out of that work, there were a long list of policy recommendations and requests that they had. Many of them can be addressed at the city or county or local agency level. And a number of those could be funded in something like the 2027 bond. It could be an annual city budget allocation as well. There are a number of ways to solve it. But I think that there are some very significant ways we can step forward, because the reality is that as inflation continues to increase, if I'm running a center and somebody leaves to go work someplace else, I just can't hire somebody to fill that room. So many of our centers have a wait list of families who want to come in, and they have an empty room, but they can't close the gap because they can't hire somebody. So without solving for this on a significant level, at the city level, and I think that we can take steps like that, but this is going to continue to be a challenge. And as Peter and Sarah mentioned, we have enough seats generally. They're not all in the right spot. There are not enough seats for children with special needs or military families or infants. But though even that will become a problem going forward if we don't have bold city solutions. And Pre-K for SA is a phenomenal partner in doing amazing work. It's a necessary, but also there's more work for us to do together.
Don't you think, Mark, that the institutional structure that's already in place with the public school districts, with the growing charter school networks, that we need legislators and the Texas Education Agency and others at the state level to say, this is where the most direct investment could have the most immediate impact if we funneled money into the districts specifically earmarked for improved early childhood education?
We'd love to, yeah.
I was going to say, I'm going to jump in, because as someone who spent the majority of her career in the PK-12 system, I think public investment needs to start before that. And as Peter said, our education system isn't designed to do early education. I've prepared literally thousands of principals and superintendents in my time when I was at Texas State. And I can tell you they typically don't come with early childhood knowledge, and they don't get it when in their preparation program. So in many ways they've got such a big responsibility in what's happening after the age of 5 that I think it's really thinking more about how do we invest in our existing infrastructure of small private businesses that are operating as early childhood providers. And I do want to acknowledge San Antonio as a city for investing public dollars in our sales tax dollars. Pre-K for SA is funded through an 1/8 of a cent sales tax. In most cities in Texas, all of that sales tax that the cities have to invest goes into public transit, which is also a huge need. But San Antonio said, no, we're going to put some of this aside for early childhood, which, and I think our friends at VIA would say, we need all that money, which they do too. But, we have to make choices. And then the city of San Antonio increasingly in their economic development policies where they're bringing in companies, early childhood is emphasized as a way for the businesses that are coming in that are getting some tax incentives and those sorts of things, encouraging them to invest in early childhood. So I think there are some city policies that are in place that are doing that, and certainly there can be more investment. I'm always happy if someone said we want to triple your budget at Pre-K for SA so we can serve more. Happy to do that, but I think we have the mechanism to do it, and it's just figuring out how do we bring all the players together in public-private partnerships to get it done.
And I think under the current state climate that it would be a little more fluid or acceptable to do something a little bit different right now, with maybe the hope or goal of really changing the structure of the public education system.
I hope we're not giving up on being able to reform it.
I don't think
it seems like there's an urgent need for everybody.
Yeah, I don't think so. But with the current climate, I think the structure of providing dollars in a more direct way via to families or to centers is probably going to have higher receptivity,
be more realistic.
And like I was mentioning earlier, there is a system in place to do that. And so one way to inject some energy incentive funds would be to either go alongside or go directly within the current funding that goes through the workforce boards to childcare. And if that's too complicated, which it may be, because I know a lot of that's federal dollars as well, then you can go alongside it. And what's interesting about this is, in some ways, Texas in this space for education, you could argue is way behind, or our community is way behind. In a weird way, there's a paradox where there's actually incentives and systems here to invest in education that are much better than others. It may just be underfunded or not tied with the right formula, or tied with quality, or tied with access. And so another example of that is the Texas Rising Stars program that is a quality rating system that many states don't have. And it's pretty good. Like, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And guess what? If you are ranked higher as a childcare center, you get more funding per student. And so they're actually, in a weird way, it's a big problem, but there's some existing solutions in place. They just not, in my opinion, they're not all being enabled in the right way at the right time with the right support, and so I actually think that makes me optimistic, because there's not just one thing we got to get done in the legislature. It's a relatively complex problem, and there's I think a myriad of solutions that can assist. And I actually think you can argue, well, that sounds like chaos, but I view it as that makes me optimistic, because we can think about different things, because as you know, Bob, like, time, leadership, environment, economic, all play a role in people's receptivity, politicians' receptivities, communities' receptivities. And so if we just had one solution, then I think I would actually be more pessimistic. And so I think to your point, it's probably an annoying answer because it's not black and white, but I think we have to build and maintain relationships across those boards, state level, Bexar County, city, even federal, like to local, to see where's the water flowing, and how can we make that water clearer and more abundant.
When you talk to other business leaders, Peter, or conservative elected leaders, do they worry that this is a form of welfare, or do people see it as an investment in not only workforce development, but an investment in our future by better educating our children?
Yeah, I think there's obviously some elephants at the table or in the room that should be called out. One of them is, hey, I totally recognize that I'm a unique demographic as a CEO of a company, right? Most CEOs of our companies, and they're great people, are people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, usually white males, and I don't think that's. I'm not shaming them. That's who they are, and they're great leaders. But that's a lot of the structure of our economy. And so this has been, they mentioned this earlier, Sarah and Mark, has been an issue that is less in their face. That has changed, which is great. The societal receptivity, as Mark was saying, you don't have to make the case, but that's pretty recent. That's in maybe since COVID. Maybe that's one of the benefits of, maybe that's one of the silver linings of COVID. Maybe that's when it really shifted, right? Their kids were calling them saying, my life's miserable. Quit your CEO job and come be a babysitter for my kids because this is horrible. I don't know what shifted it, but there was a big shift even from when I got engaged, 6 or 7 years ago, you really had to explain it to people. Now you have to explain it less, which is a great pressure point. The other, I think, that you're calling out is fair, is around this a little bit of this, I don't know if it's fear or it's just change of hey, we kind of woke up and
30 or 40 years went by, and it's like, wow, we've made great progress in our society around women in the workforce and receptivity of companies of that, and dual working families, and but our structures and systems aren't built for that.
Haven't caught up.
Yeah, even within companies, right? I mean, and I don't think it's, maybe I'm being too naive, but I don't think that's like malicious intent. I think a lot of it's maybe ignorant of intent of like, oh wow, my workforce is 40% women or 50 or bigger, 60% women, and there's whole new challenges and opportunities with that. And so I think when I talk with companies, there definitely is that maybe whatever you want to call it, old school or conservative or traditional mindset of, well, how come the wife isn't just staying at home when they have kids, or maybe the husband or whatever, like hire a babysitter, or, do what I did kind of thing, which is a fair bias. I think that's understandable. We all have those biases. But I think the image change is happening, which is good, because it's factual, and then secondly, CEOs are running for-profit businesses. Yep. And so at the end of the day, if it's not affecting the bottom line and their shareholders or stakeholders, then it's going to be lower on the radar, even if it's important to them, right? There's plenty of organizations that have incredible philanthropic arms, but if there's something that's not structurally affecting their profitability or revenue growth, or whatever their business goals are, then it's going to be lower on the radar. And I think that that is increasing. That heat wave is increasing as well. And so we have a unique period of time where we need to use that and run with it.
And I would echo what Peter says about the business leaders. I find that with policymakers at all levels, whether it's locally. I talk with our city council members and people that all the time say, we know this is an issue. What can we do? What more can we do? Same thing at the state. Have had an opportunity to testify, as well as to talk with policymakers, and across the board, people get that this is an important issue. Same thing nationally. So I don't think it's a matter of people of not caring or not wanting to do something about it. Now, what we do about it is where, right, the rub comes in, and how much do we invest in it. But they're actually, and I would say our governor is very supportive of early childhood. In fact, was the first governor to stand up a task force to address childcare and keeping childcare centers open when COVID hit. And I'm not even sure any other state had that, but he knew right away, we got to get this done. And so we have good minds thinking about this, and I think it's just coming up with some of the ways that we can, help to solve for it. So I think that's one of the things I am most hopeful about, certainly in San Antonio, because we don't wait for the state or the nation to do it. We just get down to it. And then also, but for the state too, I think we've got some good folks that are, thinking about this. And of course, Mark and some of us are helping them to give them some ideas that they might want to adopt, and hopefully they will.
Well, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you, Mark, what is the call to action at this point for Early Matters? And I know it's multi-layered, but people that are listening hopefully include people both at the corporate level and individual level that could help and may not be that familiar until now with Early Matters. And so what are we asking people in the community to do that have the capacity to help? Yeah,
thanks for the opportunity to speak to that. So Early Matters serves as a convener. We don't run centers, but we want to help all of the centers do an amazing job. And we do that with our lead partners of Pre-K for SA, United Way, and Workforce Solutions Alamo, and Texas A&M Institute for School and Community Partnership. And with that, we have created a number of different ways for businesses to plug in for tools that they can use now to help their current business model, for whether it be for designations or about being a best place for working parents, or survey tools to help them see and understand what is the true cost of that the childcare challenge is having on their own company. So we would invite their engagement. We have a breakfast the first Friday of every month, and we meet at Cappy's at 8 o'clock, and that's open to whoever wants to come. And part of what we want to do there is create kind of an easy front door to say, let me learn about how I might engage. And it can be a business leader, it can be an employee, there are families there, some childcare owners, to say, and we have discussions about what we can take on. So we need, at minimum, a huge number of advocates about early childhood, and in particular to some of the policy solutions that we're working on developing at the local level and at the state level. So we need a massive number of champions in that regard. And then, the city has put together, if there are, we know that this is a very generous city. We have, part of our intention is that we built a citywide plan. And in order to execute that plan over the next 3 years, that's going to cost us about $20 million. And so we are a good chunk of the way down on the philanthropy, thanks to the generosity of some significant folks. But we have a long, long way to go on that as well.
Are you organized as a 501(c)(3) nonprofit?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit.
That want to contribute. I'm sure area foundations and others are already at the table.
Yeah, I'm meeting with the Area Foundation next week, and we're and pretty much anybody who will sit down with us. We've got a lot of work to do, and as Sarah said, this is not a city that waits for the federal government or waits for the state to come and solve things for us. We have an opportunity to take leadership ourselves, and with the strength of the advisory board for Early Matters, with the strength of the business partners and our lead partners, I have full confidence. One of the things that Peter has mentioned that is part of why this was the right next chapter for me is that all three of us believe that this is something that we can actually solve in our lifetimes, and it hasn't been yet. But there aren't a lot of problems out there that we could actually take on and address, and we think this is an opportunity for us as a community to take a lead role. And hopefully what we do here ripples around the state and around the country.
Well, you're doing great work. So thank you for coming on to Big City, Small Town. Peter J. Holt, Dr. Baray, Sarah Baray, and Mark Larson. Thanks for your service in the community, and thanks for coming on to the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Please share this episode with friends and colleagues, and do sign up for our new newsletter, Monday Musings. Big City, Small Town is brought to you by Western Urban, building the city our children want to call home, and Geekdom, where startups are born and smart ideas become businesses. Our producer is Corey Ames, video by Erica Rempel, sound engineering by Alfie De La Garza of Sound Crane Audio. We will see you next week.